the Mega Man Legacy Collection. Mega Man 1 through 6, all originally released for the NES. These were all games I played a lot as a child, so we're gonna talk about them, and I think the most logical way to do that is to go in the order they were released. So here we have the original Mega Man. As you might expect, it's a little more rough than the games that would come later. There are only 6 stages to choose from, instead of the 8 that would come in later games. Health and weapon refills look different than in later games. There is a completely superfluous point system in play for some reason, but this sets up the structure for everything that would come later. Bosses that are weak to one another's powers. Only here, it is such an extreme weakness that you can kill a boss in 3 hits if you have the right weapon. But despite this being the first Mega Man, this was not the first Mega Man I personally played. Before playing this one, I had played through 2 and 3. So coming to Mega Man 1 after those 2 was a strange experience. I remember being most frustrated by the moving platforms at the start of Gutsman's level. I was just not great at timing as a child. I also never actually beat Mega Man 1 as a kid. I would always get to the Yellow Devil, which is the first boss for the Dr. Wily stages, and that was as far as I would get. I usually didn't even get to get an attack in on him. In fact, it wasn't till 2019 that I finally finished Mega Man 1, and that was in the 3DS version of the Mega Man Legacy Collection. Moving on to Mega Man 2. This was the first Mega Man game I ever actually played. For a time as a child, I rented this game constantly, literally getting to a point where I could play through this entire game on one life. I can't do that anymore, but I think I got so obsessed with this game because you had that ability to choose which stage you were going to do. And I had never encountered a game that allowed you that level of choice before. Now obviously, as with all Mega Man games, there is an intended order you need to sort of work out, but even once you know that order, there's really nothing to force you to follow it. But I do remember my first time playing. I looked over the 8 robot bosses, and I thought, well, Metal Man, that sounds hard. I'm betting this Wood Man guy is probably a lot easier. I mean, metal is generally more durable than wood in most ways, and Wood Man is just a terrible boss to start on. It was also interesting to figure out for the first time that certain powers made certain levels a lot easier, like using Flash Man's ability to make Quick Man stage a joke, or using the rocket item to not have to do the block jumping puzzle in Heat Man stage. Of course, as a child in a time before the internet, I remember having to figure out boss weaknesses the old-fashioned way, by just going in the boss room, and I'd just keep switching weapons until I found one that worked. Of course, the obsession I had for Mega Man 2 made me very excited for when I heard there was a Mega Man 3 coming. And I was so excited that Mega Man 3 ended up being the first game I ever bought with my own money as a child. I remember getting the game home, and the first boss I decided to fight was Top Man. And I was also shocked to find I beat him on my first try. He would be the only boss I could say that about in this game. This game did add some of the staples of the Mega Man series, the ability to slide, which is an interesting addition, but this particular entry doesn't use it very well. And of course, appearing for the first time is the robot dog Rush. He can turn into a spring, a rocket, or a submarine. And the rocket is really the most useful one, as in this game it doesn't just go in a straight line, you can move wherever you want on the screen with it. Mega Man 3 also did something unique that no other Mega Man game has done to my knowledge. After you beat the first 8 bosses, you then get 4 more stages where you fight the bosses from Mega Man 2. And it was interesting to use your new powers versus these old bosses. However, I personally think you should have also gotten the powers from the Mega Man 2 bosses after doing this, but sadly that didn't happen. Next we have Mega Man 4. And this game is what introduced the idea of charging the Mega Buster. Of course, there were some boss weapons that did this before, but this was the first time your default weapon could do this trick. This game also tried to fake you out, making you think maybe Dr. Wily wasn't the big bad at the end of all of this. I honestly wonder if anyone really fell for that, because of course, after you take care of the misdirection, you then have to do Dr. Wily's castle. This was not a shock as a child. Overall, I don't think this is the strongest game in the collection. The Mega Buster is not balanced very well, so using boss powers against other bosses becomes kind of irrelevant. The level design also doesn't seem quite up to the usual standard. It's almost like it was a sequel made in a vacuum that wasn't aware of Mega Man 2 and 3. Oh, and I guess I should mention there's the hidden item, the wire. It lets you attach to the ceiling and pull yourself up. I have never found a use for this. But the good news is that Mega Man 5 kinda gets things back on track. There's a lot more polish and balance put into the Mega Buster. So while it is still an option for taking out most of the bosses, the boss weapons aren't made irrelevant by it. There's a new animal friend you can get, Beat the Robot Bird. If you collect a letter in each stage, you can get him. But honestly, he's not really worth the effort. Also, for the first time since Mega Man 1, there is a truly frustrating area in a level. During Wave Man stage, you have a vehicle section, and this ended many playthroughs for me as a child. This game tries to fake you out just like the last one, trying to make you think Proto Man is gonna be the end game here. And shocker of shockers, he isn't. And of course, lastly, we have Mega Man 6. They try to fake you out with misdirection, yet again. I'm not sure why they kept doing this. The robot bosses here were apparently gathered together for some kind of robot tournament or Olympics, which I think was actually an episode of Gigantor back in the day. But anyway, this game seems to get a lot of hate for some reason, and I'm not really sure why, as it's really not a bad Mega Man game. The standard Rush abilities you're used to don't make an appearance here. Instead, Rush becomes suits for Mega Man. One that bulks him up and lets him punch through certain walls, and another one that gives Mega Man a jetpack. I almost never took the jetpack off as a kid because that thing would save you from jumping to your death quite a bit. Being a fairly late NES game, this actually looks a little better than the other games, but not by much. I did like that before each stage you see the stats of the robots. It was a nice detail that I don't think had any actual practical meaning. This was a hard game to get excited for as a child because I knew a month after this game came out, Mega Man X was releasing, and by that point I was definitely ready for a 16-bit Mega Man. But I still look back on this one fondly, and actually, if anything, I probably enjoy it a little more today than I did back then. And that was the Mega Man Legacy Collection. At least the first volume of it. In the case of Mega Man, I definitely think the first game is the weakest game. And that's not to say that the first game is bad. It just had a lot of potential for improvement, and the sequels, by and large, succeeded in living up to that potential. 2 and 3 are definitely the high points of the series, at least for me personally. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and tell your friends.